Hey there, we're here in Orlando, Florida for the Worldwide Partner Conference 2015. We are Season 2 of Launchpad Series. I'm filling in for Baldwin, where we talk with ISVs about some of the cool products that they build. I'm here with Chris Stoneff. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
So I'm Christopher Stoneff, the VP of Technical Management for Lieberman Software Corporation. I run all of the support teams out of Austin, Texas. And Lieberman Software is the purveyors of privileged identity management.
Fantastic. Well, let's dig in. Let's see what you got.
So I run the technical management for Lieberman Software Corporation. We've been an ISV since the mid-90s and a good friend of Microsoft for many years since, dealing with privileged identities on the Windows platform and really any platform that's out there above and beyond Windows. And today we're going to talk about a product called Enterprise Random Password Manager that functions not only as a password vault but also as a means of providing access to privileged identities and taking control back from the admins and from the consultants that have been allowed to use these credentials for an extended period of time without anybody actually watching them. And then we'll show you actually how it works.
Fantastic. Let's do it.
Okay. So our flagship product is called Enterprise Random Password Manager, also for short ERPM. And the real simple concept is that you have a lot of systems and a lot of devices out there. They have a lot of identities. Some of them we think of them as privileged, like the administrator and root, but then we also have service accounts and process accounts that run various applications, talk to databases, perform really any sort of action out there to make sure that your company continues to run. And the problem is, with so much of these things out there, just in terms of raw systems, in terms of applications, in terms of IT folks coming and going, people tend to lose track of what they actually have in their environment. And even when they know what's there, it's so massive. The question is, how do we deal with it in a timely fashion?
I see.
And so this is where we really pick up our conversation. So as far as Lieberman Software goes, we're headquartered in the US. We are the Partner of the Year from Microsoft for application development. We have over 1,400 enterprise customers using this product at scale to actively manage their identities. And the real concept of privileged identity management is that it is a very dangerous world out there. We have constant data breaches from the likes of Target and Home Depot and Sony. And you read about these guys and you think, well, don't they have tools to protect themselves? And the answer is, of course they do. They have lots of perimeter security. They even have internal security. All of them have antivirus and patching and goodness knows what else they've got. But you know, it's great if you're protecting the perimeter, but you've also got to deal with the inside. You have to deal with just simply good process in general. And you also, in some cases, got to come to the realization that you're already owned, right? People are already in there. So the question then is, how do they get in? And it starts with a quote from SANS Institute here, where they say the misuse of administrative privileges is the primary method for attackers to spread inside an enterprise. And what they do, they start in one system. The system was deployed with a basic image, so that means every system has the same credential across all of them, or the credentials, they've got literally years, decades in some cases to deal with cracking the password. So they get one credential, they start to move laterally from one machine to the next. And some real basic facts is everybody has antivirus, everybody has some sort of perimeter security, but what's scary is that the people who are running these networks don't even realize that they have been owned. Or there's, I mean, maybe they do in some cases, but there's so much information coming at them from the various perimeter devices, they don't know what to do. They don't know where to secure. They literally have no method for dealing with a compromise once it's in. And these guys are in here for a long time exfiltrating data.
So in essence, it's not necessarily that we have to worry about attackers trying to get in. It's once they're already in, how do we know that they're doing bad stuff? Or how do we even know that the account is bad, for example? Right.
So we have to make certain assumptions that they are doing bad things. Otherwise, why would they be in there in the first place? I mean, it's not just to watch TV on your stream, right? So the question then is, if we assume that they're in there and we make an assumption about things that they're doing, how can we start to deal with the problem, right? And in some cases it deals with the concept of acceptable losses, right? It's, okay, we understand that they're going to get in, we understand that they're going to start taking some data, but how can we minimize that? And it does start with a concept of, one, discovery. So even just the simple concept of what is in my environment to begin with. Yeah, I've got Windows systems and that's good and that's an Active Directory. I've probably got some Linux machines or mainframes, and I've certainly got network devices, Cisco and Palo Alto and all those things. So it comes one with discovering what's there in terms of devices and systems. 2, what accounts are even on those machines, administrator and enable and things like that, of course we assume, but also other accounts that have been created for applications, accounts that have been created just to go around the normal system that's there, right? And then of course, what are they actually running, if anything? I mean, we've seen in customer environments where we walk in and somebody does the discovery with our product, ERPM, and they find, oh my God, we fired Bob 5 years ago, but he's still running our identity management system.
Interesting. And so the discovery system looks at not just what kind of environments you have, but also what accounts have access to those environments.
Right, and how are they being used to actively run those environments.
Got it.
You know, so it starts with that. Now, once you have a database of your environment, you can see what's there. You can start to answer questions about what's good, what's bad, what doesn't look right, who do I need to ask questions about, and then you can begin the remediation process. So the remediation process then means, 1, taking control of credentials and randomizing the passwords to totally unique values. Again, this is about acceptable loss. If somebody gets into one, the idea is that they're going to have to keep re-breaking into every system and exposing their zero-day exploits that they're using and start taking time and making themselves visible, which of course they don't want to do.
Correct.
And then of course devaluing the value of that zero-day attack. Remediation means that you end up with good security and therefore achieve compliance rather than having the focus being achieving compliance without regards for what actually security is.
Yeah, I see.
Right? So then when people actually want access to these credentials, you provide them a way to gain access in a controlled fashion, either to a privileged session or to a privileged identity. But the point is that now there's a series of delegations. It's not a free-for-all, right, where we can say at this point in time, for these accounts, for these systems, for these reasons, you can go ahead and get it. And then, of course, be able to track all that now, which you never could before.
I see, because usually someone would say, hey, the consultant DBA guy needs, or gal needs, privileged access. And someone's like, okay, we'll just make an account. But then they forget about it, and then it still lingers.
Right.
And that's a bad thing.
Right. Exactly right. And even beyond that, people just hear things. They just simply learn things because nothing changes.
I see.
Right? So I can't tell you how many times I've dealt with that personally in my own work experience. But so we talk about ERPM as a privileged management platform, and really what that means is that for any sort of device that you might have or any sort of system that you might have, having something that can actively reach out to your systems without human intervention, so just a little bit of guidance up front, but then letting the system deal with the regular management, the regular discovery, the regular reporting, and alerting and tie-ins to your other governance systems that might be out there to, again, further close that loop on the process, but also in terms of programmatic access, being able to take information from those response systems that you have at the perimeter or otherwise that are monitoring those things and allow them to trigger us to take action to again, where if they see errant behavior, begin to change the passwords all over again and keep that attack surface moving.
I see. That's awesome.
Right. So the idea is install it once, little bit of configuration up front, and let the product run without any human intervention going down the road.
So if I'm understanding, Lieberman Software puts this software in your environment that is actively checking for who has access, what kind of access they have, and if there's any weird changes.
That's absolutely correct. And ERPM functions not only on-prem, but also in the cloud as well, or even in hybrid scenarios. So you can deploy part of us where you want using the Azure services, Azure SQL, Azure AD, and then have a portion of the product in various trusted or untrusted domains, DMZs as well, but still all centrally controlled, all centrally managed.
That's awesome.
So we try and make it easy. And what I'm going to show you now is the process of how ERPM will be able to discover the systems, what's on them, and then in turn how we provide access to that information, meaning the passwords in those sessions, once we have it all under control.
Let's take a look. I'm excited.
So what you're looking at right now is the administrative console piece of ERPM. There's 3 tiers to the product at large. There's a database, Microsoft SQL, takes advantage of all your HA and DR infrastructure that Microsoft SQL provides. The administrative console, which is in front of us now, which is where the admin is going to say, for any given platform, Windows, Linux, Unix, databases, we're going to start saying, let's discover them. And we can tie this again into Active Directory, into any existing asset management systems that have lists. We can also deal with orchestration, where your provisioning systems bring these systems into our product to go ahead and say, okay, what's there? What can you tell me about these? And more importantly, if we look at some of these accounts, how are these accounts used? So here we look at an account called ERPM Web, used for some items, and this is an account with a 167-day-old password set to never expire. And this is just an important part of the process in terms of what is our risk profile, right? Do we have accounts that are aged, that are never changing, that nobody's dealing with? And this is the start of the run out of the room moments. Or if I can just deal with my filter just a little bit more, we can say, here's an account, LSC service account, also another service account, in this case used in 19 different places. So from the domain, this one account is used across a number of machines where the machine names are in parentheses for services, for tasks, for COM objects. And we actually provide the most connectors out of the box, and almost none of these require any sort of configuration at all to use.
I see. So how does it get all this information? Is it doing like an active scan on the network?
It is doing an active scan on the network. So it's connecting with the APIs that are specific to what we're doing. So it's not using WMI, there's no agents, there's no human intervention required to say, oh, on this system I saw X, Y, and Z being used, so now I'm going to program that into ERPM. This is all discovered through a simple right-click action of refresh the system and discover the local account usage, and that'll reach out to all of the machines and start to see how is it used and build this information so that now we can generate reports, now we can start to begin the management process.
I see.
So this begins the discovery, we see what's there, what's good, what's bad, and then begin to start the remediation process, which now is taking control of the passwords or even fixing bad things that we find. Right? As an example, if we see this account used for services and tasks, the one thing that stands out is that it's also used for SQL reporting services. I might say that account doesn't match for that use, I might want to change it. So I can now begin in my own environment to deal with answering these questions about, are things configured properly, are we using the right stuff?
Oh, I see, because the challenge isn't necessarily with the accounts that people have, but it's the accounts that machines need to do certain things, and if those are hijacked, that's a bad thing.
That's exactly right, because these accounts that we're dealing with, they don't have two-factor authentication, they're not using certificate authentication, it's username and password, and the stuff, again, without this visibility that ERPM provides to see how is the account, the service account being used in location X, Y, or Z being used, you can't really change these things. And this is the fear factor that customers have that ERPM and Lieberman Software then remove.
And the unfortunate side effect, obviously, is that with software, sometimes they need to have access, and it's the machine that has access, but if a human can get access to that account, then they'll also have the same access that software does.
To the data, and that deals with PCI and SOX and everything else
HIPAA,
that goes along with
there's
it.
all sorts of problems that happen.
Exactly right. So the idea is very simple. We begin the password change process by identifying a password policy, saying let's go ahead and propagate that password change out to certain machines. And I've already done my due diligence, so I already have lists of machines defined in here about how these accounts are used. And then again, let's go ahead and deal with some of these elements, so services, task, COM, and again, quite a bit more connectors to deal with here. So when you do have hard-coded credentials, when you have applications, websites specifically that talk to databases or apps that talk to apps, the connectors are there, and in many cases even flexible enough to deal with running other programs that the vendor might require to perform an update.
I see.
When there's not a relevant API to call.
And I know you might have said this, but this works with local machine accounts as well as like LDAP, AD type accounts.
That's correct.
Okay.
There's no limitations from centralized or local accounts to deal with Windows in the cross-platform world. Absolutely.
Cool.
Okay. So once you have the credentials under management and the information is now secured in ERPM, and it's the data is encrypted, right? So we protect it before it's written to the database, so we don't have to worry about a DBA stealing the database and trying to deal with it, because the encryption is kept elsewhere. The next step then is to delegate the access to the users or even to other service accounts that are going to need access to the credentials that they need to do their work, or to the sessions. So users can log in with certificates by providing a username and password, or as I'm doing here with integrated authentication. We might also require various forms of two-factor authentication, be they RSA, SafeNet, or even our own included oath infrastructure, or anything that's oath compliant. So what a user sees in the interface is going to be based on what they have configured for them. So they can set up their own languages, they can set up their own schemes, but more importantly, what they see in terms of managed credentials or privileged sessions is based on the delegations. So users don't see things that they're not supposed to see.
I see.
Okay, so now I've got one credential on screen. This is the SA account for a database. Now, there's a couple of scenarios that can play out here. We might require a workflow to gain access to this. So in other words, I could request, you could approve, and then I could have. In this case, I'm configured to be able to simply recover the password. So I'm going to say recover this password. I'll put in my very clever comment and then say recover. And at this point, if I have this tied into a ticketing system like System Center Service Manager, then I can go ahead and require a ticket number as well at this point. But now we see that here is, for this system, with this SA account, this is the current password for this system. Now, it's not one we intend to set, it's one that we actively have set, right? So if you're looking at a break the glass sort of scenario, or just a scenario where it's a disconnected machine and I need the password, here it is. I can use it. I can restore the system if I need to restore it from a backup. I can do whatever it is I need to do and see the information that's there, right? Now, the password is going to be mine for the next 2 hours, which means if I either check it in first or if that 2 hours expires, this password will then be re-randomized to a new value. So you're not going to be stuck with year-old passwords and tons of people that have seen it between the time you changed it and then. Right? This information has a limited lifetime. And we literally have customers changing this multiple times per day, like once per shift change. Right, as the admins, as the help desk, as everybody else comes in.
So let's clarify. So the first program, the Windows application we saw is sort of like an overall sort of password, make sure everything is okay.
That's right.
This, the ERPM system, is for users that are requesting privileged access to specific accounts, and you can delegate which accounts they can access passwords from.
That's absolutely correct.
Got it.
And this is also where the auditors are going to go too, right, to see it. Now the flip side then is, let's say that we don't actually need a credential. Let's just say we need access to a privileged session. So ERPM does provide this functionality as well, where I can define specific applications to launch, and there are no real limitations to what applications I could launch. So, you know, in the SQL case, it's SQL Management Studio. In the Oracle case, it's probably Toad or something like that. In the Linux case, it's PuTTY, or Windows is RDP. So those are just a few examples, but literally hundreds of different options for what you might do. And when you say, I'm ready to launch an application, this system goes through a secured Bastion host. Right, so now with Bastion, you might be thinking DMZ, you might be thinking public infrastructure like Twitter, Facebook, any other social networking elements. And the idea is that it's going to be able to launch an application from the Bastion, stream it to us using remote desktop terminal services technology for remote app, and then connect from the Bastion to the secured machine.
I see. This is an interesting way of being able to hire outside folks to do important inside work without necessarily compromising your infrastructure.
Right, absolutely right. It's a great way to do it because we can time limit them, and even with the internal infrastructure, it's a great way to say, you know, you're not the guy that's going to break fix, you're the guy that's going to do maintenance when things are normal, right? So I can do a lot of different things to achieve a lot of different goals in terms of providing access to either the credential or just to a privileged session.
Not only that, we don't have to bother the IT admin, Sue, for example, say, Sue, can you make me another password?
Absolutely.
And then these things start to creep up, and there's tons of them floating around, and we don't know what they are or who has access.
Absolutely.
That's great.
So from the auditing side of the house, the system will feed into any SIM system. Most ticketing systems like ServiceNow, System Center Service Manager again, you know, but we can feed everything into it. So when your customer has a single pane of glass that they're used to for auditing already, we can feed all this information about who's accessing what, when, where, and why, and through what mechanism right to there. Of course, you can also give auditors access directly to this interface and let them generate their own reports when they're ready.
I see. And this is cool because, like, under certain medical situations, there are strict HIPAA laws of who has access to what and when and why.
Absolutely right.
And that's cool. You can have those reports.
So between this, programmatic access, a mobile-first interface to be able to say, when I want my system, it'll work on any size device, right? So now, like you said, we can take it into hospitals where they have the tablets, where they have the smart devices with minimal screens, and the system is always going to scale to meet their needs, no matter what size screen or device they're working on.
Awesome. Well, where can folks go to find out more about this?
Well, that's a great question. Folks can come to our website at liebsoft.com. They can learn more about ERPM, as well as how this product works in the Azure Marketplace, on-prem or in the cloud. And certainly do contact us for more information.
Thanks so much for spending some time with us. That was awesome. I kind of like, it's like I left him hanging there for a second. We're here in Orlando, Florida, Worldwide Partner Conference 2015. This is season 2 of Launchpad Series. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.
Thank you.